Paulina, can you tell them or explain them what is it that we are doing, the ones that are going to be attending? ¿Qué están ustedes haciendo en el diplomado? ¿En qué van? Para ponerlas un poco al tanto.
Okay, we are working. We are starting to planning our session, and after 4 months, I suppose. No,
We
4
finished
months.
by 8, I
5.
think, I hope.
Okay, after 5 months, we are. It's very complicated to explain this. We are trying to understand the methodology and exploring works, artworks, thinking a lot, sharing a lot also, but it's very complicated to explain the methodology, as you know. And now we are starting to planning our session with a couple or with our groups, and we select one artwork. After that, we are yo olvidé las palabras hasta en español. We are analyzing the piece of work and which is the issue which we are interesting about it, and we are thinking and we are trying to make our exploration lines.
Line of inquiries.
Yes.
Yeah.
Line of inquiry.
And that's it for the moment, and a lot of thinking.
Itzel, how is your English?
So.
Sí, si en algún momento quieren, les puedo traducir, ¿ok? Pueden escribirlo y lo traducen, o lo dicen en español y lo traduzco, ¿ok? Miriam, Itzel, Paulina, Rossi are part of this diploma that we're taking. And Paulina, just explain really brief the stage that they are right now. And the idea is for Paulina, Itzel, Rossi, Miriam, hopefully the others will show up soon. The idea, Holly, Ruth, and Susan, they are the directors in kind of, the executive director and in the board of directors of Maxine Greene Institute. ¿Entendieron lo que dije? ¿Entendiste?
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfectamente.
Ellas conocieron a Maxine Greene, que hemos estado leyendo parte de sus textos. Ellas conocieron a Maxine Greene y dirigen el Instituto Maxine Greene en Nueva York. Lo que ellas están haciendo es extender la voz de Maxine Greene en el mundo, y pues el IMAS está colaborando con ellos también. Okay. Entonces nosotros nos interesa pues conversar sobre la filosofía que hay atrás de la educación estética, y ellas quieren compartir también experiencias que tuvieron con Maxine Greene. Okay, so I just told them, did you understood me, Ruth?
Yeah, I did.
You said you understood me? Okay.
Yeah.
I explained them who are you, and that the idea will be to talk more about the philosophical aspects. And Maxine Greene, it's not easy to translate, and your perspective and your experience with Maxine. So I'm going to tell them that you plan some things to start, and from there we can be doing some conversations. That's okay?
Yeah,
Entonces,
please.
¿sí me entendieron? Okay, perfecto. Entonces, whenever you want, Holly, or if you want, we can wait till 2 more minutes. I don't know why people is not on time. I get really nervous when that happen.
I've just asked a few questions before I introduce myself and start. Paulina and maybe Itzel and Rosie, you can tell me a little bit about how you plan to use aesthetic education in your practice, in your profession, as teachers or as teaching artists. How do you plan to use it? Itzel?
I'm a teacher, an art teacher in high school. So to me, all methodology and things that be related to how to teach art, it's to me it's important to take. And first to try to be taught in first place to me, and then can do it something to, because the context where I work, it's very hard, it's tough. So this is my that's
Goal.
why I'm here. Yeah.
You want it to be meaningful to your students. Yeah. And Paulina?
I am teacher also at the university and the high school, and I am a little worried because I realized that the students are not so motivated in this moment of the history that we are living, and I think they bring to the university with a very whole missing information and missing a lot of things that for me are very important. So I try to apply aesthetic education to give them some surprising way to learn.
Nice.
And another way to think, because I think now in this moment with the AI, they are, it sounds very awful, but I think they are stopped to think, because I think that writing a prompt is thinking, no? So I am very worried about that, and I am trying to catch again this flavor and this taste for the art and education, no? This is why.
And just as Itzel says, I imagine you want to touch them personally, and not just to be academic or learn something, but to make them open up.
Yes, but I notice even in them, I realize they are very acostumbrados,
used to
waiting for the information.
Yep.
And for me, that is not to learn, this is not to sing, so this is the meaning.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah. Rosie or Miriam, do you want to add to that? Any other ways that you think about using aesthetic education in your career?
Hola, pues yo no doy clase, no soy docente como Pau o Itzel. En realidad,
she doesn't teach. She's not a teacher in the classroom.
Más bien yo los procesos o el trabajo que hago con las personas involucra el aprendizaje.
The work that she do with people is more like to involve the learning.
Sobre todo son grupos de aprendizaje colaborativo.
They are more like
en donde
learning.
En donde el arte es más una estrategia o herramienta para detonar procesos sociales, ¿no? Son como reflexiones desde problemáticas sociales.
Where the art is more a tool to work or detonate things with the social things, where the art has to be more related with social issues.
So art therapy?
Terapia, no es arte terapia, ¿verdad? No.
No, no es arte terapia.
It's
No.
more with the social communities, social issues.
Por ejemplo, si estamos hablando de violencia de género,
If we are
a
talking
través,
if we are talking about
través de
gender, violence on genders,
a través de un taller de gráfica, abordamos desde temas de roles de género en la familia, y cómo se van desarrollando, cómo se identifican sobre todo las mujeres dentro de ese rol familiar, porque claro que no les decimos que viven violencia de género, sino más bien...
For example, some kind of visual arts work, but visual arts
I was going to say, so more adults in community.
Trabajo desde infancias hasta adultos mayores. Todas las edades.
All ages.
Sí, son multigrado, o sea, cuando son infancias, son multigrado. Tenemos chiquitos desde 5 o 6 años con jovencitos de 12 y tenemos grupos de adultas mayores, pero utilizamos diferentes herramientas. Con ellas, por ejemplo, bordamos. O sea, nos sentamos a bordar y hablamos sobre, bueno, siempre acabamos hablando de política, pero bueno, hacemos constanzas de bordado, pero con las infancias usamos el juego y utilizamos más como estrategias de arte, como si vamos a hacer una instalación, pues bueno, utilizamos como elementos que construyen la instalación o la pintura o la gráfica para poder hablar de la situación que queremos abordar, ¿no?
You got it, Ruth?
Yeah.
You got
I
it?
didn't.
Oh.
Can you explain a little bit to Holly?
A bit. It sounds, Miriam, like you were doing strategies to help people live their fullest, and you're tapping into different areas, like gender, like violence, like issues, looking at everything in art, graffiti and paintings and everything, that you're really touching on the needs and the interests of people in the community, all ages. Is that right?
That's fun.
I think.
So Ruth,
Yes.
social issues,
Social emotional issues,
Social,
like
yeah.
the full gamut.
of the cultural
So it-
issues, but in a community setting. In a
Right.
community setting, yeah. In escuela, no. Es
Bueno, trabajamos en, bueno,
comunidad, yeah.
específicamente un programa que hice que se llama Sembrando Afectos, Cosechando Barrio, sí sucedía dentro de una escuela primaria.
So there was a program that they did inside a school, but she's not a teacher
Yeah,
inside of
an
the school.
elementary, right.
She goes and do in different places, workshops or kind of programs.
Great.
And actually, but more like a social community aspects, and will more human things, not academic issues, but more human problems, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. So
interesting.
yes, they are. Rosie, that it's teaching, she teaches English actually to kind of people in college. It's kind of college, the age that she's teaching, and she's teaching English in a community, in a community center.
Yeah.
It's kind of university, but it's not. It's like a more, like a technical university.
Right.
It's kind of a college, I think.
Yeah,
Like a community college or a technical
like
college, we
community
would
college,
say, yeah.
But she is Rosie a visual artist, or is she more of an educator that uses the arts?
She's an educator. She has never used the arts.
Okay.
It's the first
yeah.
time that she's involved with an arts program in that sense. So I think she's now using something, but
Good.
I cannot talk more about her. So
That's interesting. Thank you. It gives us a very broad spectrum of different people doing different things with this. It's really wonderful. So I introduce myself and get started a little bit. And I'm the executive director of the Maxine Greene Institute. I was working at Lincoln Center Institute for about 30 years. and now I'm teaching an aesthetic education course in college to pre-service teachers, to people who are going to be teachers, and many of them have had no arts background. So I'm trying to find a way to use what I know about aesthetic education to teach teachers to bring it into this classroom. And so so we also do lesson planning like the way you're doing, and we explore the different languages of the arts, like photography or theater or visual arts or music, so they have a better sense of what's the languages behind this. But to really heighten their, most prominently, to heighten their ability to perceive and to attend to details, to notice. That's the sort of core of the course, is to open them up. And I like a quote of Maxine's I'm going to show here because it's not in Spanish, but maybe you can help me translate. It really helps to describe what I'm trying to do in this course with them. And here's the inspiration. Works of art is from variations. Works of art do not necessarily or automatically give rise to what we think of as an aesthetic experience. Not only do we have to learn to attend, to lend our lives to the works before us, we must learn how to notice what there is to be noticed, how to respond to the qualities in particular works, how to engage as living, incomplete human beings in search of connection, in search of ourselves.
¿Quieren que se los traduzca o quedó
Sorry.
claro?
I'll go back to that. Sorry.
It's okay? That's fine. It's fine, Holly.
You got it? Okay. So, that's picking up a little bit what I heard Itzel talking about, but the idea that you're learning about yourself, that it's really important to open yourself up to things that you assumed were correct, and maybe didn't know there were other ways of seeing the world or understanding something. And works of art can be very freeing that way, because there isn't a right answer. It's not a academic pursuit. It's more of a sort of existential or and also a phenomenological pursuit of how your senses are in the world. So to go back to the biggest changes that I had maybe 30 years ago when I first met Maxine was I was teaching dance. I was had a way of teaching in the schools I thought was pretty fine. But when I went to Lincoln Center and I was introduced to Maxine Greene's work, it took me a while to realize that I had to get out of the way, that I had to be the facilitator, not the information. And that took me a long time to be a different kind of a teacher. And I watched all these other wonderful teaching artists like Jean and Barbara and all these other teachers, Susan. It took me a while to let go of the way that I used to teach and be more sensitive to what I was hearing in the students, what I was able to my perception became much more sensitive and open-minded, and I began to be able to not always get the answer that I wanted. I had to open up and get the answer that was, the kinds of ways that I could keep the answers open to the question, not just to the answer. Anyway, that says a lot, but it took a long time, and wasn't until we started working in higher ed in colleges when professors who were excellent educators, but they themselves were so eager to know how to teach differently so that they could bring the arts and this kind of inquiry and open-mindedness and engagement to their teachers so that they could become better teachers for their students. So I think you're probably experiencing that yourselves, and you're also learning to see the world as if it could be otherwise through different mediums like drawing or sound or movement or theater, or being able to as Maxine used the word, I love this word, hear different frequencies, different ways of listening to the world, experiencing the world. And I just put much more trust in that idea of experiencing things as opposed to knowing something or, being good at something, but more of a sense that that I could keep learning. So here I just wanted to share with you a few pictures going back to, I'll go into my class with my students. You maybe find this very familiar with what you're doing with Tere. Here we had some students, they're educators, young educators, and they are acting out the Three Little Pigs, the fairy story. And so they had to do tableaus of this fairy story. And this was the first time they've ever done something like this. So they were being very brave in front of theirs and being very open. They have a real kind of open, they just love to use their bodies in the classroom. Nobody has ever asked them to do that in college before. And they're having a lot of fun. But I think also we went out into the Central Park and we did a lot of deep noticing and experiencing nature using philosophy, Maxine's philosophy of responding to the world around us, listening, drawing, and then sharing with each other what they noticed. I guess that gives you a little bit of a sense of what we're doing. We also, I think, critically, as what you're doing with Tere, we guide the noticing. We look at each other's work. There's no judgment. It's really just knowing how to perceive what's there in student work and ask questions and be more open to different ways that people responded to a prompt or a question. This was actually them acting their own student teaching. So this was their lesson plan that they were sharing with the class. So that gives you maybe some idea of what what we're doing. Yeah.
You are not sharing.
Oh no!
But you were sharing. Yes, I just realized.
I thought I was sharing.
Yeah.
I'll go back quickly. Oh, I'm so sorry. That was no fun
Okay.
at all.
No, it's
There's no
okay.
fun if it's not sharing. This is the Three Little Pigs.
Okay.
They're having a lot of fun. There's the wolf over here.
Yes.
The wolf Eve.
Yeah, and
And-
then this is the being out in the park.
The casa, the roof of the house. Right?
That's right. And this is their aesthetic experience in the park with nature. That we're given different activities to make sure that they're perceiving, responding in different ways, asking questions, that kind of thing. This is their student teaching where they looked at each other's work and without judgment, but just noticed, things the choices that were made by their students. So they were learning to do that in their classrooms. They had never done anything like that before. So there's some examples of that. And I'll just share some pictures of Maxine. This was Maxine when we knew her way back when in outside of her apartment in New York City when she was in her 80s, I think. This was her last class at Teachers College. About 8 months before she died, she was still teaching. Her graduate
96
course,
there, right? Yeah, she's about 96. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
This is she would go to the museum. This is her drawing at the Met Museum. She always participated in the activities. And this was when we had a conference. We started the Maxine Greene Institute, and there's Ruth and I and Jean, David Gonzalez, back in 19. That was the year that right before she died, 8 months maybe. And this was her. We made a point. Ruth and I particularly went over, and also with Janet, to go through all her archives and had her walk through, talk about letters that she used to write before she was married, and all sorts of fun things that she wanted to share with us, because we wanted to make sure that her legacy, her letters and her papers were well taken care of. So we spent a lot of time, didn't we, Ruth,
We
going
did.
over there?
We did. It was amazing. I'll just say, when she was a student, we saw the notes that she took in class, and her history notes were perfect handwriting, nothing crossed out, no arrows, just pages and pages of perfect writing. And it was so exciting to see somebody not make an error in note taking.
But she
Sorry,
she laughed at her. She laughed a
She
lot.
did,
She was a
yeah.
very funny person, and she would laugh at herself. She'd say, "Oh, that's terrible. I don't want to take that." So she was very fun. And then this was a gathering of a lot of professors that came to her house. She had a lot of gatherings around books that she was reading, so she had a huge fan club everywhere she went. She looked so young there.
She does.
Yeah. And then this was so I guess I can then I went, this was me with her outside of the Frick. So she was going to the museums up to the end. She was wanting to see art and performances all the time. Just quickly, I'll finish off because you have others to listen to. There's a classroom that we're working with now in elementary schools in Manhattan, and we're bringing aesthetic education into their curriculum, and so that they can see that the arts are useful in all kinds of subject areas, whether it's science or social studies or mathematics. This was an example of a first grade that is studying pollination. Can you translate that for me? Pollination. This is pollen. They're studying flowers.
Pollinization.
Yeah.
So it's.
So then I thought, how am I going to bring a work of art into the classroom that has to do with bees and pollen? And then I had a brilliant idea. Somehow it came to me that Vermeer had this beautiful painting of this woman, the maid bringing her painting, if you're familiar with this. And I thought, this looks like pollen. And this is like a bee bringing her the pollen. And that, getting to take the pollen from her. And I don't know if Vermeer had that in mind, but when the students saw this, they couldn't stop talking about this painting. And they were so excited about the connection between bees and flowers and love. And so you can see we've been trying a lot of different ways to make the arts really relevant to these students that are really having a very difficult time passing their literacy course and stuff, and they have to go through all kinds of curriculum that has nothing to do with the arts. So how do we bring the arts to them? So just to give you an example of what I've been doing for the last 30 years, thanks to Maxine. So I'm just curious to have any questions you have, but I know others want to tell you their stories as well. Does that make any sense?
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Holly. It's really interesting that you've been involved more than 30 years in this
we're
practice.
Honored, but we learn it from each other. So Ruth and I can talk about later about some of the key sort of strategies that we find very useful. But let me stop for now.
Okay. Is there Ruth or Susan something that you want to share, or is there?
Yeah, I had a couple of thoughts. Some things. I'm Susan Thomason. I'm a dancer, una bailarina, a modern dancer, choreographer, educator. My students go from 3 o 4 años to graduate school, and adult artists as well. So big range of students. I began to work at Lincoln Center over 40 years ago, and I'm still there working. There I met Maxine. There was a group of artists and we were working with people with works of art, and we are not trying to create actors or dancers or visual artists, but people who can enter into and make connection with works of art. So it's not skills, as Holly said, not skills of expression, but skills of perception. But we do that through through teaching in a very experiential way, through experience. So you put it, one of my favorite words, embody, put it in the body, and that is done in all the art forms. So the learning is embodied. And one of the very most important things is that we put people in the role of the creator or the artist, and we encourage them to make their own personal connections with a work of art. So not to listen to what a critic says, right? Because sometimes that puts, or listen to what very smart people say about a work of art, but to make your own connection. So, for example, in my graduate class at Hunter, I take the Garcia Lorca play, Blood Wedding, Boda de Sangre.
Bodas de Sangre, yes.
Mm-hmm. It's been made into one of the greatest dance films ever of all times, and it's a story. You may know the story, but it's an arranged marriage. So the bride and groom, the families have made a deal. You know, it's not that they love each other; it's an arranged marriage. And the bride at the wedding, the bride's lover shows up, and she leaves the wedding with him, leaving the groom and the wedding party, and they ride off on horses. Some men from the wedding and the groom go after them on horseback, and they meet, and they have a very slow motion fight, a knife fight that's done in dance in slow motion, and they kill each other. So both are dead. So she has blood on her wedding dress, blood on her hands, because she's responsible for their death. So the film is very, very beautiful. But I ask people to think first, not to dance, but to think of a time when they were at an event and someone unexpected showed up. It could be something very dramatic or very, very romantic or very funny, actually. But to connect it to their own lives. And when they were in a formal event, are you entiendes? Are you understanding? Yeah, are you understanding what I'm saying? Okay? So that they can connect that feeling of being somewhere in a party or a ceremony or a time of a festival or some important event where someone unexpectedly showed up that they didn't know was going to be there, and what happened from that. So they're working from their own experience, right? And then we take someone's story and we might make a picture. We would call it, it's in French, a tableau, una pintura, a snapshot, right? Of that moment when the person shows up at the event. This would be like the bride's lover appears at the wedding, right? So we would make several pictures and then link them. So they're using dance and movement, but they're going at the core of the artwork about the idea of someone unexpected, creating a huge response and maybe breaking the whole event apart by their presence. Can you understand what I'm saying? But they're doing that by connecting it to their own lives. The participants are connecting it to their own lives. So we're asking them to do very simple things. Just make a picture with your body, like a sculpture, like a photo, move maybe in slow motion and make another picture. So what happens when the unexpected person arrives, and then what the result is, right? we're asking them to do it through movement and their bodies, but we're not asking them to be dancers or create choreography. But they understand what the artwork is saying by entering into it and becoming a part of it, embodying it. Embody, ¿cómo se dice embody?
Corporeizar.
Corporeizar.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a beautiful word. That's a beautiful word. I don't know. Yeah. So some ideas about this that things that I learned from Maxine are the idea of noticing, being very attentive. We would say wide awake. I don't know if you've used that term, wide awake.
Amplio despertar.
Yes, wide awake, open to everything, noticing everything, taking everything in. So that awareness on a really, really fine level, and being able to notice what is in any particular moment, noticing, right? And then also to also the idea of responding, reflecting. So looking back at a work of art, reflecting, looking at something afterwards, and responding in different ways. It might be in words, it could be in pictures, in movement, in sound, but reflection. ¿Cómo se dice reflection? Reflexiones. Reflecting. It means in I think it's actually originally Greek, to look back at.
Volver a mirar.
Yeah, to look back at something. So to have the experience of looking at a work of art, listening, looking, examining it, noticing it, and then to look at your experience afterwards for what is there, because that's where a lot of the learning is. Maxine taught me also that you don't need a work of art to explore art. You can look at art in daily life. So if my students end my class in the graduate class by being able to look at the street and maybe see the patterns of the trees against the sky, and be aware of that as an aesthetic experience, as an artistic experience, right? So you're more attentive, more open, you take things in a deeper way. That's what she means by attending to. Attend doesn't mean just to be present, but to be fully present with your whole self. So she talks about bringing your life to the work of art, right? To the work of art. And it's very, very powerful. It's very, very powerful work. It can also really be used for social change and social change, as well as artistic experience as well, because we can use our imaginations to not only look at and explore a work of art, but to imagine how things could be different if they were, in the future, perhaps. And another thing that she taught me was, she said, I am what I am not yet. So I am always growing, always evolving. It never stops to the end of your life. So you were always, we would say, a work in progress. We say in English, I don't know if you know that English saying, Tere again, a work in progress.
Trabajo en proceso, work in progress.
Proceso, work in progress. Yeah.
And
you are, I am, I'm never fully finished, fully done, but always expanding, always open to becoming different, to seeing things in different ways. So there's no right or wrong, there's just different ways of looking at things, and giving people the confidence to look at a work of art, or to look at anything, to look at a scene on the beach or whatever, and give it your own interpretation, make a connection for yourself. It's very, very powerful.
Wow.
So, yeah. So I don't know. Maxine was she was very brilliant woman, also very humble and ordinary in many ways. She was fully human in that way. So she talked with a voice like this that was kind of through her nose, la nariz, and and a Brooklyn accent where she didn't sound like classical actor or or a wise philosopher. She had this voice like this, and she was just but she in her 80s, we would work at Lincoln Center, she and I together. I would go into her class, and I gave them the Kafka story of metamorphosis once, where the Gregor Samsa, the narrator, wakes up in the body of a cockroach. Maxine was in her 80s. She was down on the floor on a studio in Lincoln Center, trying to feel what it would feel like if you were a cockroach, right? And you were on your back and sort of vulnerable on your back. So we would say in English, she walked the walk. She was not afraid. Yeah, she was not afraid to try herself and to put herself in a vulnerable place and really, really be open to things. So she was a tremendous teacher to me, unforgettable, and a tremendous model as an artist, as an educator, a philosopher, and a human being, right? Who made good meatloaf. She cooked simple things and talked like this. And she would always say, after she gave this brilliant speech, she would go, "Was I okay, Susan? Was I okay?" Does that make any sense in her voice like this? So you think, I knew she was a great lady, but she didn't sound like it. She sounded sort of like I don't know, a librarian in Brooklyn, or an ordinary shopkeeper or whatever, right? So anyway,
I noticed that Paulina had a question about how Maxine arrived at art, and you might know more than I do, but I know that her first love was literature.
Yes.
And poetry.
Poetry.
And so when she was at Teachers College, she would teach aesthetic education and through literature, noticing the text of Balzac or Shakespeare or Hemingway or
exactly
Neruda or so that was her work of art. That was her specialty. But she
wanted to be a writer. Actually, she wanted to be a poet, and she did write throughout her life. Actually,
she was a beautiful writer, as you can see. But her brilliance. Evolved into adoring. That's when she came to Lincoln Center. She fell in love with the teaching artists there because she felt that they had power to understand the arts that she loved so much, like theater or visual arts or dance. So she learned so much from the teaching artists. So there was a beautiful combination coming together.
We partnered her. We partnered her literally in teaching and exploring art. And sometimes literally with so it's true, Holly. She particularly liked the connection between poetry and dance. She thought there was a special relationship there. So I treasure my friendship with her, as well as all of the incredible ideas and the brilliant philosophy that she put out there. But it's experience and personal connection, and wide awakeness.
Perception, yeah.
Perception. Those are some ideas to take away from her, the way that she approached things. And she had been a philosopher, of course, of great renown, and very interested in the arts, obviously, wanted to be a writer, taught literature as well. But she came together in the 1960s, when Lincoln Center was new in New York. They were bringing hundreds of thousands of people to New York to see great artists, but it changed people, but not for very long. And so Mark Schubart, who was the dean of the Juilliard School of Music at that time, knew Maxine, and he thought there must be a way to have more impact on people, more lasting impact with encountering a work of art, right? There must be a way to do that. And he decided, he brought Maxine in because she was a great educator and philosopher and very interested in the arts. And they decided that if artists worked with teachers, regular teachers, that together they could bring students, young students and students all the way up through college, into the world of the arts together as partners.
This was never done before, ever, to
Never
have
done.
a major arts organization and a philosopher of education come together. This was the
Right.
first time. It was a brilliant idea, and that's where Lincoln Center Institute came from.
Yeah.
But also there was the root that she had in John Dewey. And
Yes.
John Dewey, well, you know, his famous book on the artist experience, he was way back. So she was a real student of his,
Right.
believing that the arts are essential to this new progressive way of teaching.
And he began progressive education in the United States. It's still the basis for much education in the United States. So she was his student, right? And then we're her students. We were her disciples, and she.
And
was
now you're
John Dewey's.
students
And
as
now
well.
you can,
You.
yeah. So it's generations of that. Yeah, yeah. But, yeah. John Dewey also believes, so that idea of experience being primary,
And the aesthetic experience in
and the
particular.
aesthetic experience, right, comes from
And
Dewey.
imagination. Yeah.
Imagination.
I had-
Ruth.
Yeah. Oh, so I start. I've been reading a short article, which I'll send you, Terry, to share, called Imagination and the Healing Arts. And in it, Maxine cites John Dewey as saying, facts are mean and repellent until imagination opens intellectual possibility. And it's a very nice short article. So I'll speak in English slowly, if that's okay. And then Saturday, I'll speak in Spanish. I met Maxine when I was a graduate student. And I had heard that here was this amazing woman. And I said, but what does she teach? And I was told, I can't tell you that. I don't even know how to put it into words, but go and see her. So I sat down and I was tired and I thought, okay, I'll watch somebody new. And she started in that gravelly, deep voice of hers that Susan imitated so well. I imagined her with a cigar, like after this speech. Though she didn't smoke, not then anyway. And she started to talk about how important it was to pay attention and to look at things in different ways, multiple perspectives. And I thought, what's she talking about? And then she started to talk about Sartre and then Hemingway and a film that she saw the week before. And I started to follow. I had read that piece by Sartre. I had read the book by Hemingway, and I'd actually seen the film. And I thought, I'm so smart, I can follow this philosopher. This is amazing. And she kept going further and further away, and I didn't know what she was talking about. And then suddenly she pulled all these ideas together, and it was all about imagination and how we can create our own imagination. And when we influence others, it's that ability to be non-judgmental, as Holly said, and show different ways by guiding students to be spontaneous and to reflect. Reflection was huge, a huge issue for her, that we do that. And that was my first inkling of something different, and it transformed me. Later, I was invited to go to a workshop that she was running at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and she did the same thing. She was very much interested in a piece by Miro, and the teaching artist had all of us stand in the position
and showing how uncomfortable it was to move our heads this way. And she started talking, leaving a lot to the teaching artists to do, but every once in a while she'd start talking about other philosophers or how it was uncomfortable for her to look at something. It would remind her of some experience that she had. And I left there thinking, I have to bring this to my work. So just as a brief explanation, I had started out as actually as an artist, as a sculptor, and then I became a teacher from nursery school, preschool children, very young children, all the way to middle school and high school. And I became a special educator, and I became a principal of a school. And then I went into higher education, where I've been for many, many years, and ran departments. And it was interesting because when I first heard about aesthetic education and met with Holly before we even started doing conferences together, I brought it to my administration to find out, how can we bring aesthetic education to the college? And the dean and I went down to Lincoln Center and met. And when we left, the dean turned to me and he said, "So what is it?" Because the person who we met with didn't really say, "It's this, you follow these steps and this is how you do it." And so luckily the dean trusted me, and Holly came in and ran some workshops and was kind enough to let me do some workshops with her. And I could see the difference immediately. Paulina, you had talked about the disengagement of students in higher ed, and since the pandemic, we're feeling it in schools that we work with, and certainly at the college level. And I had been trained as a student to listen to my teacher, that the teacher was didactic, would give instruction, and we would follow. And in the last few decades, we've become, in New York especially, very much a place where we have units of instruction. We follow a curriculum very strictly. We have standards. We have tests. We have a specific way of doing things. But when we look at aesthetic education and aesthetic literacy, we can center the instruction on the student rather than on the teacher. And we become the guide, as Holly and Susan have said. We become non-judgmental, but we take different steps that we have planned to get the students to think outside their comfort zone and to feel more comfortable in looking at things that are different. And the same article that I was reading this morning, she said, imagination and transformations make it possible to defamiliarize the familiar that we take for granted and allow us to see it in a different light. And that's what we do when we say, okay, look at it this way. When I went down to Lincoln Center, and this was a workshop that Holly had run, we saw a play of the Tuskegee Airmen. This was a squadron of Black soldiers that were overlooked for the most part. And we saw this play that was probably, Holly, about an hour? Not even, maybe. And then the next day, because it was several days, this workshop, we all had to sit in different places in the theater to watch it again. And then we talked about the nuances, and it was that different sense, that different light, that we could look at something that was so new to us. It took us away from the familiar to something fantastic. We started being asked, anything in your background when things weren't going your way, and that you had to shift the way you did. And it started to force all of us to look at our own experiences. So when I went to my college classes that I was teaching, I metaphorically threw out everything I did, and I started bringing in much more creativity. And even now, I've been doing special education for a long time, and research in that, and advocacy. But I find that when I'm giving information, I need to get something back from a different way. So I usually have my students think about something physically, get involved, like the Three Little Pigs, or that visualization that Susan gave with the red blood on a white dress in a slow motion dance. I have the students do that no matter what we're studying, whether we're doing math or student teaching or an introduction to literacy. And I always try and bring in an artwork, whether it is a video of a dance or of a sculpture or a storytelling piece, so that the students are constantly forced to think about what they know and what they can bring in. So during the pandemic, for instance, I used Maxine's idea. I had them all bring in something familiar to them that was in their apartment or dorm or home. So some brought their cat. I had my cat with me, so I showed, here's my cat. Others brought in a doll. Some of the women brought in earrings, and I had asked what was important to you as part of that. And I did a lesson from that, and then we built up. And I don't know how many of you have seen the graphic novel, The Arrival, by Sean Ten. It's an excellent book. No text, just pictures. And I focused on some scenes of the father leaving home and packing a suitcase. And I said, what would you put in this suitcase? And students did things like that. And then we did our lessons that of writing and of discussion. Years later, a student came up to me and she introduced herself, and she said, you might not remember me because I was in your class during the pandemic, and it was a huge class, but I'm wearing the earrings I brought to that class. And every time I wear the earrings that my grandparents gave me, I think of your class and what we did that day and how we got through the pandemic with your course. And it was humbling for me to think that that small gesture was so important to a student. So I think that Maxine has taught all of us a wonderful lesson. I had taken students over to her house. These were adult students who, under a special situation, were able to be master's students. Some of them hadn't graduated high school, and I took them to storytelling in Central Park in New York City, and then I took them to bookstores, and I had had them find things that talked to them, that meant something to them. And then we came to Maxine's, and they acted out scenarios for her. And Maxine did a very interesting thing. There was one student who was wearing a special hat for the occasion. And Maxine didn't ask about what she had performed. She asked about the hat, because she also liked to wear different hats. But it got the student to talk about her own family, and how she was one who started wearing hats, and soon her mother started wearing hats, and her daughter started wearing hats. And they had this really fascinating conversation. And I could see Maxine doing what she always did and pulling in all these other things. And at the end of her conversation with this one student, she hit home what we'd all been trying to do all day, which was thinking differently and using your own experience to teach yourself and to share with others. And that's exactly what Maxine did that day. So that's always stayed with me when we did that. So I think I should stop. I've been talking a lot.
Talking a lot. It's great to listen to the three of you. And I don't know if there are any questions.
There's a good question of Paulina's.
Yeah, I was just gonna bring that up.
Maxine, and what we did, and I know Susan was there the whole
Juilliard's
time.
dean,
was
Mark
Schubart, and what they did was to invite teaching artists, and I was one of them way back then, Susan before me, and Jean and Barbara and 25 others. We helped to, as a cohort, help to evolve her philosophy into a methodology. That's what we did at Lincoln Center as a teaching artist. So I got to say that as much as I learned from Maxine, I learned from my colleagues, watching them in their different disciplines figure out how to teach the different works of art, and that was an amazing education that we
That
were
was
very
amazing.
privileged to have. And it was Maxine's philosophy, but developing a methodology that Tere is now sharing with you, it was absolutely cornerstone, because we saw these brilliant colleagues inventing these activities and classroom activities for K through 12 students.
It was sort of like a science experiment, Holly. Really,
exactly.
we
for
were
20
we
years,
were just,
I think.
yeah, and we knew something was happening, but Maxine could give it words.
Yeah.
Right? She could give it a philosophy. We knew
But she was always
changes were
delighted
happening.
with what we did, Susan, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely,
she couldn't believe what we were coming
Right,
up with.
yeah.
But
So-
one thing, the back and forth is like, it's not
Yeah.
only Maxine, it's not only the teaching artist, but it
Yeah.
was like from one part and the other, and just melting and
Yeah.
growing.
I think a third portion of it was when we started to work in higher education, because the professors who knew so much about education were teaching us about education that we didn't know. So I remember being, how do you teach children? Well, you need to, understand Dewey and Freire and all these others. I didn't know those people. I was just going as a dancer, learning how to come up with activities. And then I started learning about academic ideas. And that was a whole nother level of, sophistication. Yeah. That informed me how to convey these ideas and make them. So one of the strategies, and I know that Susan knows this, is things like you ask a question, then you ask a follow-up question. They may give you one answer, but if you say, then tell me more, then they'll start to really tell you. Most teachers don't do that. They just ask a question and then they go on to the next person. But if you really ask a question, you really want to know get more out of the person. Like Ruth is saying, make it personal. There's things like that, or have the students respond to each other's work. Teaching artists are very good at that. Regular teachers don't often do that.
No.
You have to reflect on your own work, but you have to look at somebody else's work and respond to it non-judgmentally. Does that make any sense? You start to cultivate a community of learners, a community of inquirers, a community of
The curious.
risk takers.
Yeah, curiosity, a community of curiosity.
Yeah,
right?
you go.
And then that takes you deeper into looking at anything. Because all the artistic languages are all languages. There's a language of dance and music. They have their elements of that art form. And we're looking at how those languages are used to express ideas by the creator and then by the observer, the audience, if you will, right?
And children, adults too, but children in particular, are just waiting for somebody to ask them those questions.
Yeah.
Show me a shape that shows you that you're scared. Show me, a drawing that tells me what you think about this story. Just give them opportunities, and there you are. It's right there. You ask a high school student to write a poem about a painting. Right there, they have it. They can do it if you ask them. Nobody asked them.
The activity.
And how you ask them, because
if you structure the activity before you ask them that or whatever. But we're talking about open questions too. There's no one right answer, and any all questions are valid, right? All questions are valid, and then maybe from there going into questions that have a particular lens or a point of view.
Mm-hmm.
I
think the facilitators, and Susan's so good at this, the facilitator models to the student your fearlessness. If you can get up and make a movement, and you can have the courage and to go into another place that never been explored before, you make this possible for them. This is they see it in you. You're the conveyor of this, and so I think that's an important part of it too. It's been really a pleasure talking to you. Do you have questions? I think we really want to hear your questions or your concerns, maybe.
Paulina, did that answer your question about how you go from sort of theory to, sometimes you have to work on it like I would say like the scientific process. You experiment with a structure and then it evolves to something, right? Yeah.
But do you, any of you have questions that you're coming up with as you work with Tere and her team, that you or discoveries that you have made yourself that you'd like to share,
or challenges in your own practice?
Yeah.
Tómalo el riesgo. ¿Quién comparte?
Anybody? Tell us. We want to hear from your experience.
Quieren escucharles, quieren ver cómo es la experiencia que ustedes están teniendo, qué dudas tienen, qué descubrimientos, qué retos, algo que... O estamos en blanco, a veces pasa.
¿Qué miedos? What fears do you have?
Yo tengo un montón, pero quiero que también dar chance a los otros. I have a lot, but I think it's for all of us.
It's
I say there are some times where there's too much information that sometimes it's too much to process sometimes.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
You need some time.
Or the reflection will not come, or it comes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I take when there is a silence. I always say that. And because-
Soph
I understand.
has a question. And it's in the chat.
Oh, Sophia. It has. There was in any moment there was a consideration of making changes in the methodology due to the context that it's been applying into it.
Mm-hmm. I quickly will answer that because I need to go pretty soon. When we've been asked to do this work at the elementary school I was telling you about, it's changed the model from what we did at Lincoln Center. At Lincoln Center, we used to have a work of art that we would work around. At this new school, we don't have one work of art. So I've asked the teaching artists to look into the curriculum that they're studying. Like I said, the pollination or rainforests or Revolutionary War, whatever the topic is. And then they have to come and find a work of art that helps to open up that curriculum. So it's a different approach. Do you understand? Comprende? And so instead of the work of art here, it's now the curriculum, and then we find the work of art that makes sense of the curriculum. So it's a different approach, and it's still using the essential qualities, the capacities. I don't know if you talked about the capacities of embodying inquiry, making meaning, empathy, but it's a little bit of a different method. But we're hoping that I think Maxine would be okay.
If I may say, one of the great things of aesthetic education is that it's not static, and that it can be evolving, and it can change. But there are some elements that are there, but you can be playing with them in a completely different ways each time.
It's true, Terry. And it can be political or social. And it could it could be used to generate action and response from people, even political response or social response in that way. Or it could be completely based in an art form in a more abstract way, or a way that is more focused on the language of that particular art form too. So it could be anything.
Feels so important. I think you would agree. Every child deserves to have art in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're, even if you're not a professional artist, it seems that this gives you some empowerment to bring the arts in if you appreciate it through aesthetic education. So that the importance for children to see excerpts from plays or musical elements that they would never have listened to, Beethoven symphony maybe, or a not just a Frida Kahlo, which is fantastic, but also a Picasso, or that they have the experience of seeing the world through the artist's eyes. Seems like such an important thing for children to have an opportunity to see the world as if it could be otherwise. So there's something essential about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And well done. And Sophia, just one thing, and to add to what Holly and Susan are saying, sometimes the students teach you what you need to change. I had done research with a high school class, and I was told they had special needs. And I've worked with all 13 of the disabilities that are covered in the United States. And I walked into this class, and some of the students were nonverbal, which I was not expecting. And there I was with my list of the capacities of imagination. And I thought, okay, we're going to talk about this piece of art that I'd gotten in Oaxaca. And I was very excited by it. And one boy started talking, and it was being transcribed by some of my students while I was doing that. And I was trying to change my vocabulary and not look at them and look at the work of art so that I wouldn't be distracting the students. And eventually, I kept going back, and I kept speaking less and less and showing more and more to this high school class. And one girl in the class who was nonverbal, the teacher had never heard her speak, started talking about the artwork with the student who I pointed to, because I didn't want to use speech. And it was so eye-opening, not because I did it, but the students were showing me what to do and how they communicated. And they started talking about the artwork, which had never been done in that class. The teacher had always given them the materials and told them to create it. So sometimes you just have to watch, whether they're in general education or special education or university or younger. I know, Paulina, you're asking about taking it to the university. How did it happen? Sometimes, absolutely, they don't understand the importance and scope of aesthetic education. And I started a group of private colleges, and we meet with the state and the regents who talk to the state education department. And Holly came with me, and I had told the group of private colleges that we were going to do this, and not everybody even wanted to do that. But I started the group, so they had to kind of listen to me. And the regent was very excited about it, but it didn't go further at that point with the state. With the department, I would do, as I said, I would bring it into the classroom. I would make sure that the deans, when they came to observe me, would observe me on days I was doing it. And sometimes I was asked to present it to other instructors at meetings. But the nice thing is, because we had syllabi, we had to follow strict curriculum and get through to meet all the standards, you could still bring in the arts. Even if it seemed like a strange connection, I would bring it in anyway. And I would say to the students, how does this relate to whatever the theme was I was talking about that day? And they would come up with something. And then they'd start making connections. But sometimes you just have to jump in and bring it as a supplement to the class, and bit by bit it starts having more importance, and it's excellent for disengaged students because there's that surprise factor
Really
that you were
true.
talking about.
Mhm.
And I know Susan and Holly in their college teaching have had wonderful stories of the students
The way it
responding.
started at Lincoln Center was at some point, we had done it at K through 12 for 30 years. And at some point, somebody said, but teachers in the classroom don't have an experience with the arts. What do we do about that? And they went to the chancellor, the top of our education system in Teachers College, and they said, we're gonna put our money where our mouth is, and we're going to put a amount of money in the state budget to make sure that there's arts and education, aesthetic education brought into every single city college. And that's where we started to work at 10 different universities with teacher educators, because they realized that arts are never going to get into the classroom unless the teachers themselves have experience with the arts, because they don't feel comfortable. They're afraid of it. And so we started to go in to 10 different colleges in New York City area every semester in 5 different courses. It was just prolific. And that was a breakthrough because nobody had been doing that, training teachers.
And Maxine has a quote. I asked her, I was talking to her once about, because she had a fascination with, young high school students who were interested in hip hop and break dance and whatever at that time. But she said, I don't have the faintest idea. She was very interested in them, but she said, I don't have the faintest idea how to teach them. But I know if I can change the teachers, I can change the students. So it was changing the teachers' awareness and sensibility. That was the key.
Yeah.
Llaves to changing the students. It was, not necessarily the artists might not be able to do it, or Maxine might not be able to do it, but it was the teachers who were so important in that in making
transition,
change.
transformation.
Mm-hmm.
She herself never taught in K through 12, as
Right.
far as I know. She only taught teachers.
Right.
So her love was for teachers. That was her first love.
Yeah.
I should go pretty soon, but it's been such a pleasure. If you have questions that you want to send us, or we'd be happy to follow up with you, Tere, if you want to.
Yes.
Or,
yes, as I was saying you before, it's important for me to let them know that we are part of a larger community, and that they are becoming part of that larger community. That we don't stop only by we already teach you goodbye. It's like, how can we continue being part of a building community? And so I will be sure that if there's a way that we can continue connecting, and any questions or whatever they have or you have, we can just be.
We're starting to learn students over in Ireland, and I think they would love to meet you. So maybe we could get students from other countries together, because they're in the same place that you are. Different language.
Would be great.
A lot of interest in Maxine's work all over the world, actually, So you are part of a worldwide community, of people interested in this work and hoping to maybe put it out there for the world's population and your own community at home too. Yes. So we hope you will join us, and we can respond if you want to see. I don't know, Holly, do we have films of artists working? That might be something that.
No, but I encourage you, Terry, to help them to go to our YouTube site, because there are lectures of Maxine. There is discussions around how to teach to Guernica in a different methods. There's a lot of information there that maybe you can guide them to see. Hopefully we're going to have more actual teaching students, but that's difficult.
Yes, yes.
We're going to get there.
Yes, I'm going to guide them for that to get into the Maxine Greene Institute mailing list and knowing what you are doing and go
YouTube.
to the
And
YouTube channel and see all this.
please join our subscription, and we'll have, maybe that's the next step we should do, Tere, is to have a translation of a place where we can Spanish speaking, have more dialogue with the Institute. Thank you, Tere.
Thank you very much for the
Or
time.
la jefe, I guess it's
I think I'm having problems with my internet. Thank you very much. See you on Saturday, Ruth. See you soon.
Yes,
you
yes,
for
and
your
some of
time
you
and
then.
Please
Muchas
feel free.
gracias
Muchas
Please
gracias. Hola.
Continue the
por tu
conversation. Yeah.
atención.
Yes,
Sí.
gracias.
Gracias, gracias.
Gracias a todos ustedes.
Good night. Thank you, Tere.
Good night.
Thank you, Holly, Susan,
Great.
Ruth. Thank you very much.
Great.
Adiosito.
Adios.
Encantado. Love these guys. They're very sweet.
Yeah.